Welcome to this meeting of the Milton Planning Board. It's January 13th, and I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman, and
Bernie Lynch, member.
Diane Carligan, secretary.
Peter Jackson, member.
Emily Ennis, member.
Ed Duffy, member, and we are not meeting in the Selectmen's Conference Room. We are meeting in the Carol Blute Room.
William Clark, planning director.
the first item is, could I have the agenda? Thanks. Is the approval of past minutes, and I've got some suggested changes to the open meeting minutes for December 16th, which I'm going to give to Diane for her and the secretary to discuss. The executive session meetings minutes, as there are a couple of things that we need.
Right.
And one is that we've got to reflect that the members were individually polled and voted to go into executive session.
And out of executive session.
And out of executive session. And the other thing is that the substance of what was discussed at the executive session should be included in the meeting, sufficient so that if the Attorney General if someone were to complain to the Attorney General saying, they never should have gone into executive session, the Attorney General could say, well, send us the minutes and we'll take a look at them. And that it should be sufficient to show the Attorney General that what went on was in fact not appropriate for an executive session. So, and we will next time have copies of the minutes of November 18th and December 9th, and presumably this meeting.
Well, Mr. Chairman, doesn't the last sentence say why we went into executive session?
It didn't say what occurred. It
There
didn't
needs to be more
say
detail.
what the options discussed were.
And we're going to approve that? Wouldn't that kind of tell the other side?
Well, no, and then the minutes are kept in a secret place.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're kept until the case is settled, at which point you bring them out and vote them through.
Right.
Or we just put them in the open file.
Okay.
Okay?
Be a week from Monday then, Diane. Right? You and I?
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I'd like to request that we get whatever corrected meeting minutes in our packets by Wednesday, so we have an opportunity to review them, prior to coming into the meeting, as opposed to just getting all these minutes
I
at
think
the
that's
meeting.
an excellent
So I
request.
think they should give us time.
And Mr. Clark just pointed at the secretary.
We'll be meeting with Diane.
So Diane, those two that you and I...
I'll send the 18th and the 9th to everyone tomorrow via email. Is that okay? And then the changes that you have today as well.
I'm going to give those to you tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
It was the 18th, it was the 18th, because it was the...
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanksgiving.
And then you can send those out
Okay.
via email because Mr. Duffy will be in to see you. And you can give him hard copies.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. Our next scheduled meeting is on the 27th. In location
Council on
TBD.
Aging.
Where do you think it's going to be?
Council on Aging.
The Council on Aging. A good spot. The next matter is citizen speak. And at citizen speak, we invite citizens to speak on matters relevant to our duties and mission. So who would like to speak at citizen speak? And introduce yourself for the cameras and for the board, of course.
excuse me, Margaret Donovan, 41 Central Avenue.
Do you have a microphone for her?
I don't need a microphone. I'm used to public speaking, which my neighbors are not. But I just wish to take this opportunity to clarify my role, because I'm here before 36 Central, and I'm also here before 131 Elliott Street. And for the listening audience, all two of them, I think that there should be some clarification.
2,000?
All two of them?
I believe it was Mr. Lynch who said in jest, if I were a groupie being here, and I know he meant it in jest. And so I wish to clarify what my role is, in addition to speaking on behalf of the neighbors of both locations. And so to do that, I would like to, and I would like these back, I would like to show you the first urban renewal project in the Central Avenue, on the edge of the Central Avenue Business District. Now, some of you may remember this carriage house. It looked like that. That now looks somewhat similar to this, except another $14,000 has gone into it. I'd like to point out the back of that carriage house. What it looked like and what it looks like now. To give you some of the history of that neighborhood, that carriage house was bought by my father for his business from the chief of police in Milton when the police station was directly across the street from 41 Central. He sold it to him to be used in his business. My father owned 2 taxis with Milton licenses on leased MBTA land right there on Central Avenue, as well as he had a large number of Boston cab medallions and another office leased land in Mattapian Square. His one competitor was Ray Fallon, who was a contemporary of his, who had one cab. The difference, my father purchased that property to have his cabs washed and also to store his limousines. The difference between the two men is that Mr. Fallon had boys, and my father was blessed with 6 girls. Each one was supposed to be the boy. So my father didn't want any of us girls to have to take on the headaches of that kind of business, because where the Fallon building is now was, maybe Mr. Lynch remembers it, was an automobile dealership and a service.
Mr. Ahern.
Mr. Ahern, Mr. Bill Ahern, and then you must...
B. Ahern.
P. Ahern. And you must remember then Vinnie Nelson, who was the service manager. And that's where the cabs were most of the time, because the drivers could care less, it wasn't their cars. So my father wanted us to get educated, to get a profession. And so we had Margaret, the lawyer, deceased Lucille, the teacher, Sheila, the purchasing agent for a large greeting card company, Carol, the nurse practitioner / realtor, Ginny, who's made more money than any of us, a realtor, and the housewife, Kathleen. This little house that you saw there, the carriage house, was really a carriage house. It was part of the land of the poor widow that owned the house where Mr. McLaughlin is right now, who eventually had to sell all of that property. So this was a carriage house with a real hayloft in it. I used to go down there, we used to bring our clothes down there. With 6 girls, we had tons of them, and store them upstairs. There was nothing so wonderful as the smell of that chocolate milk coming up, and sitting on that stone wall at Henry's, eating that chocolate ice cream cone. So that, in a nutshell, is where I'm coming from. When my father passed away, my mother inherited the shack, I called it, the carriage house, And I told her that if she wanted to sell it, I want first option to buy. And she then said, how was I going to pay for it? And I said, off my inheritance. Well, the fact of the matter is that I had to put thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into it, but that's where I wanted to live. It's a good thing that I took that piece of property off my mother's hands because it had become a chop shop. There was a car in there that I notified the Milton police on my way to law school. And yes, indeed, it had been stolen from the Denham Mall. My interest, my personal interest is in the renewal of that neighborhood because I was the first to do it. Keith Mills was second with the wine shop. I don't consider that monstrosity that's gone up across the street in place of that former police station as anything that contributes to the beauty of the neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Other citizens who want to speak? All right. We're going to go on to our consideration of Lot 10, Fletcher Steel Way, and the owner of this lot wants a lot release in order of release from a covenant because of title concerns, right?
Yes. This is the deed that they bought. This is the original covenant. Here's the covenant that you signed originally. It's 2 of the lots. And there's the one that if you give me permission, I'll sign for you tomorrow.
This application for Fletcher Steel Way has been completed. It hasn't been accepted, has it?
Yes, it has. It was
Okay, it's
approved
been
by town
accepted, so it
meeting.
really has been completed.
It was accepted in 2009, at annual town meeting 2009.
This says that we release Lot
7, house number 10.
Lot 7, house number 10, from the covenant which was filed in order to ensure completion of the street.
Yes.
So I think that you take a look, but this is not controversial. You file, when you do a subdivision, what happens is you can post money to ensure completion of the street, or you can post a covenant saying that one or more lots won't be sold until the street is completed. The street is completed, the street has been accepted, the covenant really is no longer in effect, but
A very diligent lawyer found
a
this.
lawyer wants the release, and it seems to me that what lawyers want, we usually give them if we can do it reasonably.
Is this covenant on every house in the Fletcher Steel development or just this one?
Yes, every lot.
So it is possible that we will
You will
have
see,
this again?
you'll see either 2 or 3 more of these.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the garden that's maintainable. Is it maintained on a good basis? It's spruced up every year? Who knows? Does anybody know?
The garden club's doing a pretty good job, I
They
think.
do, I don't
Are
know.
they opening it up to the public at some point?
They will. I know that they spent a serious amount of money buying new plants, replanting, just making bringing it back to the Fletcher Steel design.
But this release in no way affects that garden.
Who owns the fee? Who owns the fee of that Fletcher Seal garden? Who owns the,
I don't know.
I think it was left,
Neighborhood Association?
No,
No,
I think it's
the
being
town.
left to the town.
I think
I think it's the town.
I think it goes to the town.
Cochran deeded it to,
With conditions. It had to be undertaken by a certain period of time, and they did start it. They did do work on it. I wasn't here when that whole thing went down, so I'm not completely familiar with all of the garden I know the wetlands part of it.
Well, Fletcher Steele was quite the arborist, quite the landscape
Landscape
architect, yeah.
Are the other lots built up now?
No,
There's one.
there's
one
one
left?
left,
One left?
down between Mr. Cochran and Dr. Brown.
Which probably pleases both of them, except maybe Mr.
Maybe
Cochran.
Mr. Cochran doesn't like it.
Wouldn't it make more sense to have one application to release all the lots and just be done with it?
It would make some sense, but
It would make sense, except this request didn't come from Mr. Cochran. I called Mr. Cochran because he already sold the lot before, and now there's a third owner coming into the lot.
Right.
So actually, Tom was very helpful in pointing me in the direction of where these things were. I actually do have the plan for Lot 7. It's not an as-built, but it shows where the lot is, and
the,
if you want to see it.
it seems to me the problem with releasing everything is that it affects everyone's title.
Right.
And monkeying with
It may be
other
cleaner to do it
people's,
once.
other people's
one at a
title. If
time.
they want it, I think we should do it. And, I mean, they're going to pay for the recording. It doesn't impact us.
Okay.
So I would suggest that we authorize Mr. Clark to execute this release.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion?
Yes.
Do you have any obligation to tell all the other people that this situation exists and?
No.
No?
This situation may not exist. I mean, we would have to do a title search. We would have to form an opinion as to whether or not this release is necessary. Because I'm not at all sure that it is necessary, but the lawyer wants it to make it unmistakably clear that it isn't a flaw of this title, and
And the press is here, I'm sure they're gonna report on this, and Bill would be getting 1,000 phone calls.
exactly.
Thanks, Frank.
Okay, other discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye. All right, the motion is unanimously approved. Now, we are going to discuss the trim of the first floor at 36 Central Avenue. We have a request for a materials change, and the developer has gone, and as you face the building from Central Avenue, on the far right, he has encased one of the columns or supports. They're not columns yet, but one of the supports holding up the second floor over the arcade with what he suggests would be an appropriate substitute for the stone material originally approved. And we will hear from the developer, and we will, everyone is supposed to have looked at this. And I have looked at it, and I've got to say that I have an open mind, but I don't like what I saw. And I am going to be, it's going to take a lot of convincing for me to approve or vote to approve a substitution of this, whatever it is, for the stone material. It basically looks like a wooden or a plastic, whatever. I mean, it's built of plastic boards, but it's not, it doesn't seem to me, it seems to me that what we approved originally was right for the building, and this isn't. But I'm, of course, open to being convinced that I'm crazy. Go ahead.
Good evening, my name is Paul Sullivan. I'm with Armor Enterprises LLC, or I'm working as a consulting with them. Actually, we've had some further discussions today with the architect and with Michael Moore, one of the owners, and we're working on an alternative design to what we have up there currently. So we were going to postpone tonight to the 27th to give us a little more time to solidify our position on it. But I'd like to hear the board's opinion of the trim that's up there, though.
I think that would be useful.
Sure.
I have some questions on the trim
Yes.
that's currently up there. The first question is, I believe that it's proposed, that you're proposing to paint that trim, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so what's up there now would not be the same color as what you would actually propose to have.
correct.
Second question on that is the maintenance of the paint. I'm wondering how well it would bond to that particular material, how often it would need to be repainted. I mean, one of the advantages of the stone is the maintenance would be less than that painted material. And I don't have personal experience with the type of material that's up there to know how well or how often it needs to be maintained. Obviously, with it being at the very, at the ground level, the very public level, if it should need more frequent maintenance than might otherwise be expected, that would be fairly obvious fairly quickly. So I have to say that's a concern. And obviously the color, I would hope on the 27th that whatever options you bring into us, you bring in the actual materials and colors. It's hard to judge when you see something that's not completely matched. So, thank you.
But we can, tonight we're going to decide if we like what's sitting there now.
Well, if it's going to be painted and we don't know the color.
I understand that, but if you remember our discussion
I do
at
remember
the
our
last
discussion,
meeting, we
yes.
said tonight we were going to decide what's up there now, and so tonight we're going to decide what's up there now, unless we determine not to decide it, but we will determine that.
Well, in that case, I'd like to know about the maintenance, please. And if
Sure.
you have the exact color it's going to be painted.
The trim would be painted the same color as the rest of the trim on the building,
Okay.
which is sailcloth, I believe. It's a Benjamin Moore color. It's an off-white. And, it would have to be maintained just like the trim on the rest of the building would need to be maintained. I'd expect it to last 8 to 10 years anyways. As you said, because it's down at ground level, it may, people putting their hands on it, it may, people putting their hands on it get more dirty than damage the paint. It's just you have to wash it once in a while. But there is a certain maintenance to, the trim versus probably the masonry.
And have you used this particular trim material before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how often have you found it necessary to repaint, as opposed to, say, wood, basically?
Right. Well, it's been a relatively short period of time that I've been using it, but it seems to hold paint a lot better than, the conventional pine wood. And I think the biggest thing that's happened is pre-priming of a lot of materials too, that it seems to weather a lot better than when people used to put raw wood up, whether it's clapboard siding or, so it seems to last close to 10 years.
Just a question of Paul?
Sure.
What lasts 10 years? The finish or the...
The finish.
Oh,
The
obviously.
material lasts a lot longer than 10 years, yeah.
But it's not subject to insect infestation. I mean, it's a plastic. I saw it. I love the way the lines are, because the color was kind of a stark white.
Sure. Yeah, it would be the sailcloth off-white color that the whole building is going to be.
And it's not oil or
No,
paint. It's something
it's a
acrylic.
it'd be acrylic, water-based, yeah. Just about everything's water-based now. It actually, it's more durable. The sun doesn't break it down as easily as an oil-based product. So, most exterior paint now is acrylic.
The nailing, how is it affixed? Will you see the nail hole, the heads of the...
They use almost like a finish nail, and it's a small head on it, and then they,
Kind of sink it.
yes, and then they fill it, they putty it, caulk it, and paint over it, sure.
Okay, any other comment from the board?
I would comment that it's hard for me to judge what it's going to look like there, just having one little corner. I, would want to see at least a full rendering of that side of the building and what it would look like. I have a couple concerns. For one, with that heavy masonry over the top, particularly with the arcade, it seems to me that the base has to have some mass in order so it looks like it's supporting things. And I've got this photo of the old police station that was there. You can look at it if you want. But it had a stucco top and a brick masonry bottom so that the base was sturdy and the base looked strong enough to support the top. Where if you put something light and white and plastic out there, it just doesn't look like it's got the mass to support that. The other thing is looking at the design around the entire building. The masonry solution appears on 100% of the columns and all the way around on that whole level. So this would be the one facade and the most visible facade that we abandoned the masonry in favor of this different approach, and I'm very leery of that. I think if to consider it, I'd have to see a rendering of what it's going to look like. But I just I'm leery that it will look right out there.
Maybe you could tell us why you are proposing this. Did your architect say that the masonry is inappropriate?
Well, he thought that the trim and the brick would be a nice look on the front of the building, and that was just...
So this was an architect-initiated suggestion?
Well, he visits the site on a regular basis because it's part of his inspection regime, and he has to return reports to the building inspector. So, it's one of the many things that come up during his visits. He visits almost every week or every 2 weeks, so it was one of the things we discussed at one point.
So it's an aesthetic matter, not a cost matter, and we should just exercise our aesthetic judgment. Okay, fine.
Would a darker color achieve what Pete wants, I wonder?
Depends on the width of the supports. If the supports are very slender underneath all that mass, a darker color wouldn't help. If the supports are of a decent width, it might serve to give visual weight that would offset the mass on the upper part. But Pete's got a very good point that if the mass is, the supports don't look strong enough to support the rest of the mass of the stone, it's going to look very, very odd to the eye. I mean, people won't necessarily be able to put their finger on why it looks odd, but it will.
But I think it needs some more architectural thinking, it seems to me.
I see that Edward Ruggles was the original builder of the building, huh? It's curious.
What's the significance?
Well, it's another project in
Ruggles
town,
Lane, yeah.
Ruggles Lane. I think there was some, it was before the board at one point.
Well, my own feeling is that if this is simply an aesthetic matter, as has been represented, what we approved originally seemed to me to be aesthetically good, and I certainly think this is aesthetically less good, and I don't know why. I mean, we can process this thing further if you want to do it and get renderings and whatever. But in my view, aesthetically, the masonry solution is far, far better. Far, far, far better. So that's my view. In any event, we can hear from the public and see if they have any thoughts. Anyone want to be heard on this? Introduce yourself for the viewing audience.
Thank you.
Margaret Donovan, 41 Central Avenue, directly across the street from 36 Central. I spoke with the building inspector, as you suggested I do, to find out the answer to the question on how close this building is to the 42 Central Avenue. He gave me the answer. I had to accept the answer. At the same time, I just talked with him about the material change, and I did mention that I thought that the brick, the 2 rows of brick, the 2 floors of brick, if they're going to do anything, they should continue the brick or the stone down below for aesthetics purposes. You have the black tar, rubber, whatever it is, mansard roof. So he sent me down to look at, I believe it's called Jack Rabbit's, the former doctor's building. Mr. Lynch was there. He mentioned that the brick, you couldn't use real brick because of the 4-inch, and that was confirmed by the building inspector. But the building inspector said that there is this brick veneer, which is the outside material on the Jack Rabbit building. It's quite attractive.
It might be known as Z-brick.
The
The letter Z-brick.
That would certainly be more in line with what's already there. I had the same questions in my mind that Emily raised. If they did paint it, what's going to stop it from peeling on plastic? And I think that that is going to happen over the years. I would like, and I know that's supported by the neighbors, something that's more aesthetic, that carries the lines down. Certainly not that white, garish finish. If you look at the back, it's of a less expensive material, but it carries the theme down all 5 floors because of the garage in the basement. And so the back is actually much more attractive than the front is. So I would ask you to not go with the white plastic. I don't think, even if it's painted, that it's going to last. And consider either the original stone that he showed on the original plans, or possibly consider this brick veneer that's 1 inch thick, I believe. That would be suitable as well in terms of extending the lines down. Thank you. Yes.
What did the building inspector say about the closeness of the building to the line?
He said that it was that 42 could do it. He'd run into this problem. He considers it wrong, but he's run into this problem in other buildings in Milton.
42 could do what?
Extend, remember I said, how can they have the building and allow that easement to go up where the building is so close? Because there should be a 10-foot side in residency areas. They're supposed to be 10 feet from the building to the lot line. And there doesn't appear to be there now, and he was aware of that. But just as, and this, I would think, I don't know if you have any other large areas where you're going to be considering change in zoning. I think that zoning should be changed. To look at that monstrosity of a building dwarfing that little bungalow, it's not a pretty sight when you're looking across from my house. Any of the tenants, because I don't see how they're going to be able to sell those condominiums in this down market, they're going to have a nice view across both the front and the back. In the back, they're going to look out across the brook into all those well-maintained houses, Elva Proctor's, Louise Valera's, and others up there. Those in the front are going to look at 5 architecturally different but also well-maintained properties across the street, which is on my side of the street. So we're just asking, please, put some aesthetics into that building, because right now, It's not a pretty sight. And in fact, we are starting to get comments from the neighbors, and the comments are, how could the neighborhood allow such a huge monstrosity of a building to go up in that tiny lot? And we said, we had no choice. It went before the town approved the zoning. But I would respectfully request, since you brought up the issue of the space, that there be requirements for a building, a large building like that, to have space on the other side and not be built right up to the lot line. Thank you.
Well, one thing is, of course, with the special permit, we could have required there to be space along the side if we had so wanted. And apparently we didn't. But I think one of the reasons was that it wasn't a significant issue at the time. But I mean, with the special permit, it certainly, if people said you need a 10-foot setback or more, given the fact that this building, and you're right, it's a big building on a tight lot, and making it fit was a feat of pyrotechnics. Maybe not pyrotechnics, but it was a challenging situation.
I wish to clarify and thank the board for one of the reasons why it was built so close to the lot line, right on the lot line of number 42. And that is, over the course of the 8 years that I have been before this board on that particular construction project, I did request that the driveway not be directly across from mine, because it's a nightmare as it is right now, trying to back out and get in, and to have them move going in there. And you did consider that, and that, I'm sure, was also behind some of the reason you put the driveway right beside the O'Neill building. For that, I thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Who else wants to, yes?
My name is Louise Boveris, and I live behind the building on Brookside Park. I'm going to be short and sweet. Margaret's covered all of my concerns. My biggest concern is that, as I think you remember, we took a field trip to see the building that I think it was Paul's building in Stoughton, and to Hyde Park and to Quincy to see buildings that Orrin Moore has built in the past 3 or 4 years. All of the buildings, in my estimation, and I'm not an expert, they were shoddy. None of them were too old. They was peeling paint, the rails were peeling, cement stairs were already chipped. I'm concerned because now he's applying to change a material that was approved at the beginning. And all of a sudden, he wants a cheaper material, and in my estimation, it's only because it's cheaper. So I request that you do not let him change any material.
And what about the aesthetics?
I don't like the way it looks, what's there now.
You prefer the stone solution?
I would prefer the stone. I think, as Emily said, it would have structure, or I'm not sure if it was Emily or Mr. Jackson. It would have structure and look like it's really holding up the building.
All right.
I think you saw all of these pictures. I don't need to show them to you again.
Okay, who else wants to be heard? Now, no one else wants to be heard. I'm prepared to have them come up with it. I think that what's there is unacceptable.
The plastic material.
What they put up is unacceptable. If they want to come up with something else, something different, it's their option, but I would think that they're spinning their wheels and wasting our time, and that the stone solution should be, we spent a lot of time coming up with that. It seems to me rejecting it just sort of on a whim is not a good way of doing things. Anyhow, I don't like the proposal, and I do like what we originally approved. So I'm certainly going to vote to keep the original plan in effect.
Discussion? I thought I heard Paul say that he and his partner were going to go back to the drawing board. And, but yeah, he would like.
We'd like to reserve your opinion till we present something that you can see visually.
That's what I thought I
next
heard.
week. I mean, 2 weeks and 20.
Visually, is it the same thing? Are you just beating this horse?
No,
Is it the
I
same?
think you'll like what we come up with.
So you want some color, renderings in color for us?
Yes.
Well,
And
you'd better have materials and,
Yes, we'll have materials too. So if you could just give us to the 27th to make it clear what we're presenting here.
Cross your heart.
yes.
For clarity's sake, Paul, we talk about the whole facade plus the columns,
Yeah, the columns and what's above it, yes.
But not the facade behind it.
just the whole front, nothing else, except the front.
Just the outside of the arcade. They're still talking that the front facade, the weather-tight section of it, you would still be proposing the masonry. This is just for the outside columns and trim.
Yeah, we'll come in with the whole thing so you can see the whole picture of it.
Good pictures, okay.
And you can have your architect make a little statement as to why the new solution is a better solution, since it is totally a matter of aesthetics.
And make sure that your architect can talk to how it is visually coherent. And if there's a change in materials, why those materials would work well with the new proposal. It's a large building, it's a complex building. I'd hesitate to introduce too many new materials.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what I'd like to see at the next meeting, Paul, is this. A picture of the plan that we approved originally, a picture of what's there now, and a picture of what you're going to what you propose as an alternative. 3 pictures.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, 3 elevations.
Yeah.
3 elevations?
Well, there can't be pictures because it's not there. They have to be sketches of what it supposedly
Architectural
would look like.
conception, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, well, I get the sense that the board's willing to continue this matter until the next meeting. So we will.
6:45 again?
6:45,
No, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
Okay.
At the Council on Aging
On the 27th.
on the 27th.
No conservation.
But, you know, this is taking on, this is almost as involved as the tree. So,
His tree or the Elliott Street tree?
okay.
Tree as well.
We do have the tree, all right.
American sycamore.
Okay, 88 Wharf Street. We're going to discuss your parking.
How's everyone doing?
Welcome, introduce yourself for the thousands of viewers.
I'm John Collins, General Manager of 88 Wharf Restaurant. And the handout that's being passed around is kind of a recap of where we've been from the beginning on the parking issue. And I'm going to put forth some proposals on where we'd like to go as far as the special permit requirements regarding our agreements for the use of the MBTA lot as written in the original special permit. The original special permit using the 1 space for every 4 seats of capacity determined that the number of spaces required would be 35 for a restaurant of our size. And you are probably all very aware of the language in the special permit since you wrote it and signed it. But I have, after the special permit, the parking outline I used in a couple of the meetings where we discussed parking, where it shows the total number of spaces available to restaurant patrons, and that includes the 20 that are used in the MBTA lot 7 days a week. There's the 10, and right behind it is a in-color rendering of the different areas where people can park. There's 10 spaces right across from the entrance to the restaurant. There's 20 down 41 Wharf Street along the water. The 20 leased from the MBTA that I'm going to actually take out of consideration as the proposal goes further. 2 spaces in the loading zone for a total of 52, and then additional parking, 16 along the street by Wharf Street and the street going down to the MBTA lot, and then 24 in the Wharf Street lot. That's 2-hour parking during the day and then open at night. For a total amount of 92 when we started. That's including the 20 that are being used at the MBTA lot. Obviously, with the difference between the 35 and 92, we were exceeding what was required by quite a bit. But in the interest of cooperating with the board and the concerns of the community, we agreed to do things that board members felt necessary with opening a new business and having unforeseen variables in regard to the traffic and parking for customers of this business. As I stated in the last amendment I came in when we were talking about daytime hours on the weekends, after a year in business, what we have found is that the issue with parking was not the availability of it, but a need for direction and management of it due to customers not really knowing where to go rather than not having a place to go. So in the original special permit, the board requested that we employ a valet parking service on Fridays and Saturdays to manage this during high volume nights of the week. On our own, unsolicited by the board, we decided and saw fit that we needed a valet 7 nights a week due to the issue that we deemed the main issue of parking in that area is the management and direction of it rather than the availability. And we continue to have the valet on every night. And it really is a big help to the customers because they can just pull up, and if they want to use the valet, they can valet their car, or they can ask the valet where they should park. And we found this has been working very well. However, going forward, we would like to request the requirements of the MBTA lot be changed from, at current, the permit reads that we lease 20 spaces 7 nights a week. We have found that the only real time the T-lot is needed is actually coincidentally on the days when the board felt the valet would be needed. And this is due to the amount of parking taking up in the hospital spaces, 41 Wharf Street, and the Wharf Street lot, taken up by the people that aren't using the valet. And on Friday and Saturdays, the T-lot is useful for separating the valet cars from the general public, where during the week that's really not needed due to the lower volume of patrons. So, so to go further in in my, the paperwork I handed out, past the diagram of available parking, I put together, what I did was I took 1 week out of every month of the year. And what the spreadsheet shows is the amount of customers that came into the restaurant, and then the parking spaces that would be required for those customers based on the 1 and 4. And then the 72 parking spaces available represents me backing the 20 spaces out of the equation to show the amount of parking that is available and how we are on basically every night of the week, we have excess parking to the 35 spaces originally required in the special permit. And you can look right down the column that says extra spaces required. And the only nights we come close to maximizing the formula is during the summer months on a Saturday, a Friday or Saturday, where we do over 200 people in a night. But in this analysis here, that only happens on a couple of occasions, and in that case, I still have excess parking according to the formula of 19 spaces. But recognizing that the need for, so in theory, if this was just all numbers and all formulas, we wouldn't necessarily need the MBTA lot at all. But recognizing the need that we highlighted as the real issue of the parking 6 months back, need for management and direction of parking rather than availability, we recognize the need for those spaces on Fridays and Saturdays, and would be willing to enter into an agreement for those spaces on the weekends so that management could be efficiently operated during those high volume nights of the week, where we basically do about 40% of our weekly business on Fridays and Saturdays. So I think that's the essence of my proposal.
Question?
Yeah.
I thought last time you came before us, you were suggesting reducing the number of MBTA spaces you leased from 20 to 10.
Right.
And is that still part of your proposal?
Right, and
To
just-
reduce to 10,
and
but
just
only
on
have them available on Fridays and Saturdays?
Correct, yeah. And that would just be for a place for the valet to put his cars.
And your term customer covers, that means how many paid customers you had there?
Right.
Okay.
How many people take up the valet service generally?
Actually, considering it's free, I'm surprised that more don't. But I would say maybe 25%.
Oh, really?
Of the customers.
Interesting.
It's an interesting thing. People seem kind of protective of their cars, and the valet is actually he opens doors, he tells people where to park, and the popular thing to do seems more one person drives up and drops another off and goes and parks. So yeah, considering it's a unintentional plug here, but free valet parking, it's not used as frequently as you would think.
How many valets on a busy night, John?
We always run with one. I had a couple occasions of special events where I brought in 2 because everyone was coming at the same time. And that's when you really need the extra body. When they're spread over the course of the night, one person's always been able to handle it.
Now, the procedure for amendment is an application. In other words, you thoughtfully provide us a copy of the parking. And as you can see, where it says amendment, the permit may be amended on your application. And then it's notice, advertising, and a hearing. So we're going to have to do it that way.
Good.
And I think that this is a good basis for attachment to the application for the amendment to this special permit, and I think you're going to get some relief.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Duffy.
Ron, I asked some years ago, and I asked last meeting, and I asked one more time. I want to see on a town of Milton assessors plan, I want to see this whole area. It's all in one sheet, assessors plan. I want to see the lot lines and the ownerships of the various lots shown, which is an easy thing, very easy thing to do. If somebody's going to take the effort to do
It's
this.
already on the assessors plan, isn't it?
Yeah, but the ownerships aren't indicated though. The ownerships I want to see.
No.
But you finished, Al?
No, I was just wondering.
So what I want to see, John, is there's another potential use going in down there, which could require much more parking for institutional parking, like educational use down there. So what I want to see is this area all the way to the end of the wharf, and who owns what lots, see, 26 plus 14 doesn't tell me who they are, or who owns the land, where's the bulk storage. That's what I want to see to get my vote. And on the assessors plan, I'd like to see it, I've said that 1,000 times.
This is the as-built for the condo building, which has all of the
Does it show
abutting properties.
which lots are required under the Rivers Act and so forth? That's what I want to see. And I can't say it any clearer than that. It appears that these parking spots are always available, but they're not always available. There are multiple uses down there. So I'd like to see much more information of the area, ownership, and the lots, and any restrictions on any lot, whether it's not restricted or 2-hour restrictions, so on and so forth. It's not a big exercise, but that's what I need to see to act intelligently on the matter.
Sounds like a pretty big exercise to me.
It's not.
Saying, well, are the lots restricted? That means you have to go to the registry and look at every deed. I mean, I'm not exactly, what is the,
I'm talking about
where are
parking.
you trying to go with all this information?
I'm trying to act intelligently on this matter, and I'm not talking about ownership, I'm just talking about parking restrictions, that's all.
Well, you just said you wanted to know the ownership.
Yes, ownership and any parking restrictions on the various ownerships.
Ownership and any parking restrictions on the ownerships? I don't understand what you want, and I'm not sure you do. I mean, it certainly reasonable requests are, but does the board feel that this is what we need?
I thought we already had one of those maps. It showed each parking space.
And the shared parking and
The shared parking, everything. I'm sure we got one with the
the
original.
condo owners,
application.
every more time.
I think all the spaces are owned by the town with the exception of the 10 in front
Yes.
that are owned by the restaurant after 5 p.m.
And the MBTA lot.
Yeah,
And we-
yeah, I remember we had this.
The mixed use was, I determined was really only an issue during the day when you have the commercial entities that are more 9 to 5, operate 9 to 5.
That's all right.
And what is the problem with this?
Explains how the numbers come up. Is the 23, is the 23.
Yeah.
There's no designation. Those ones are on this sheet. So that pink is the MBTA,
Exactly.
yellow is what goes with the condo, yellow is yellow, and orange is the public, and that's public, public, public.
Yeah,
What's this?
that's this
That's
right
the
here.
yellow. Here, goes with
Actually, we
the
should,
condo building.
yeah, orient them so they're the same.
These
There
are here.
and there. these guys here.
What's the restriction? 2 hours, 4 hours? I don't know.
6 to 2 hours phone service, 3 to 4 hours.
This is the plan that goes with their amended special permit for parking.
Well, pencil notations aren't what I meant. I want to see one simple plan, absolutely clarity, where are the spaces, who owns the spaces, what are the restrictions on the spaces? That's
How
all.
do the police know where to ticket?
Exactly.
I mean,
How about that?
There's a sign in front of it that says...
each one?
Each one,
No. I said my
each
piece.
space.
And there's different time, there's half-hour parking.
It says right in the bottom there. I know there's 2 handicap, simple service on, and there's 8-hour parking at a couple of them.
I think all the restrictions are during the day. The hours are 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, or something like that.
Okay, now what does the board think about having another plan?
Or maybe just pretty up that plan.
What?
Pretty up that plan so that...
Maybe that plan should be prettied up, and we will consider whether or not it's adequate.
I'm sure there's one that we've had in our files. I mean,
You think there's another plan?
I think I've seen one. I can dig it out of my files before the next
All right,
meeting.
let's, I mean, we're going to want to, it seems to me that the board has to agree on what we need here. But you still can file an application, but the plan, yes.
You're requiring them to file an amendment to the special permit.
Yes,
They have to do that.
Okay.
It just has to be.
yeah.
February 9th?
Yeah, this gives 2 weeks for the
Okay.
hearing.
I don't have 2 weeks to make it to the 27th.
Right.
Okay, let's
So
do
it'll
it
be
February
February 9th.
9th. Okay. All right, and we will be discussing at our 27th meeting what sort of plan we need to supplement our understanding of the parking situation there.
Great, thank you.
Bill, did the reconstruction of this parking lot provide any more spaces than are noted here? You know, the town lot that they rebuilt there, I think there's additional spaces.
Yeah, there was
that
some
were-
additional spaces, yeah.
I think there's 3 additional spaces.
They built the wall.
They built that wall
Wall
and
pushed,
organized things
and held
a little
everything
better.
back.
Yeah.
And you're going to make those pencil notes into a sort of a 8.5 by 11 with,
Right.
Have your staff do it.
you know, have your staff do
Okay.
it.
Other staples.
All right, thanks. We will,
I'll be calling you.
we're going to work on this.
What time on February 9th?
When was we were discussing materials at 7?
No, we're just,
That was on the 27th. On the
Right.
9th, we can do 6:45 if they want.
Why don't we do it at 7, just because there's probably, we can always put your report in case we need, or in case you need extra time. Okay. You have on this agenda proposed future zoning changes. We had a interesting communication from the 1 Elliott Street developer saying a zoning amendment might be needed.
1 Elliott?
Well, whatever
131
Elliott,
Elliott.
131 Elliott.
Different sides of the street.
Right, is 1 Elliott down in Mattapan?
No.
No.
1 Elliott is the building on the corner of
The health
Elliott
clubs.
and
Where the
Adams.
health club is.
It's 1 Adams, 1 Elliott, depending on which side you're on.
Oh, okay. All right, in any event, 131, we did have, what zoning changes, what proposed future zoning changes?
You told me to leave it on there until,
Oh, okay. I don't think that we, well, what about that, you did indicate that there might be a problem with the zoning for 131 Elliott, is that right? Is,
Not me.
it wasn't you.
Not me.
Okay, and Mr. Conley is here, and he's not jumping up to, well, he is jumping up.
Isn't it too late for the ATM?
Look,
Okay, sorry, Jerry?
we're thinking about next year.
Well, it
At
seems-
the pace this is going.
but it seems to me we did have, you had drafted up a proposed article related to accessory buildings.
Yes, we already sent that to
We
the
sent
select.
that off.
That went to Selectmen, we had it in.
Yeah,
That went
we voted.
before the
it.
end of December.
Right.
I believe the deadline, though, is tomorrow.
Today or tomorrow,
I
yeah.
think it's tomorrow.
Okay, so you're,
But that one, we're gonna have to hold public hearings on.
Yeah, we'll have to.
I turned that in.
all right,
Right.
fine.
But we're done.
What about proposed zoning changes at 131 Elliott Street?
My communication was that there could be
Oh,
a problem with the setback with the back parking lot, but that is yet to be determined.
okay, thank you.
So it's nothing we have to act on tonight.
No.
All right. You can just sit right there, because as I understand it, the proposed definitive subdivision plan at 216 Pleasant Street is going to be continued for a couple of weeks because of the covenant not being approved by Mr. Flynn yet?
Yes.
Okay, is that right?
Yes.
All right.
And what time on the 27th? All right.
No, you can't go 6:45. He's 7 o'clock.
Well, we don't, we
Anything I have to
don't,
do after- I have a scenic road, a scenic road hearing at 6:45 on the 27th.
So that'd have to be 7:15 then.
okay, put it down at 7:15. You never know with scenic road hearings. Especially, Mr. Lane does tend to go on.
Mr. Lane won't be present at this one, and I'll take you through it when we finish with Mr. Conlon.
All right. Okay. We're now going to discuss the arborist.
Ah, yes.
The arborist for the oak at 131 Elliott Street. And before we do, we will give you an opportunity to tell us why we shouldn't do it.
I just have a feeling you forgot your pieces, so I'm giving you.
You're too kind.
Thanks. You have, you did send out some material from your arborist indicating that he really doesn't think that this oak tree is salvageable.
Although that was not what the RFP requested.
No, I didn't get anything like that.
Mr. Maltby?
Mr. Maltby is one of the guys that responded to you.
Yeah, he wasn't, he's not their arborist.
He's not.
He's one
He
of the ones.
sounded like their arborist,
Yeah.
but okay.
That's the original. You want to read that one in? You might want to read it in when you're done.
Well, I don't think it's, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think it's germane.
All right.
Okay. We have, why don't you describe the RFP and what resulted, Mr. Clark?
Board came up with a,
And what the RFP was for?
The board seeks services for a consulting arborist with significant experience in analysis and preservation of heritage trees to assess the structural condition, the health, and the vitality of a 58-inch diameter black oak at a proposed development site at 131 Elliott Street. The scope of services includes the following: measure the height, the crown spread, the diameter, the breast height, and estimate the age of the tree. Assess the structural condition of the trunk and the crown. Assess the health and the vitality of the tree via a 10-year analysis of growth nodes. Peer review report from the developer's consultant arborist, prepare a written report and attend one public hearing of the Milton Planning Board to present and discuss the findings. Proposal should address the technical approach to each of these tasks, provide a lump sum fee for all project elements. Proposal should also provide consultant qualifications and client contact information for projects of similar scope the consultant has previously completed. The proposals were due 4 o'clock Wednesday, December 29th to my office, at which we sent this out to 7 different companies, 6 that you had a listing for and 1 extra.
Who else did you send that to?
I don't have that one down here, but I sent them to, we have websites for these people, and it got sent to their websites, or to the emails at those websites.
So you don't know who the 7th arborist was that was sent out to?
I have written that upstairs, I don't have it written down here. What we got back for responses were Largest Forestry, Inc., and Maltby and Company. CC of Maltby Tree Care has changed their name to Maltby and Company. You have before you their proposals and the write-ups. It's 2 separate sections. The single page is Mr. Largest resume.
Yeah, it looks as though he responded to the RFP. He gives us the qualifications we requested, and he responded point by point to the RFP. Mr. Maltby, is that what it is?
Mr. Maltby actually came in the other day and said that he actually went out and looked at the tree that's back a while ago. He met with people in the neighborhood, looked at the tree. He actually wrote his, from having looking at the tree, not going point by point for the RFP.
But he did, but the point I think I'm making is that he didn't actually respond to the RFP, so in fact, we have 1 response for this RFP.
That's right.
So,
But let's, so Maltby was the second one. Why don't you give me that letter, just because it is sort of, I mean, he's sort of went and did the work before.
well,
It's
yeah,
non-responsive.
that's exactly, that's not.
It's a
he may
non-responsive
have-
proposal, so it's
Yeah.
thrown out.
He may have done the work, but we didn't ask him to do the work. We asked him to respond to the RFP, and he didn't do that. Did you
Well,
get-
I think that I should read this letter.
It's a non-responsive proposal, so it just doesn't have anything to do with anything.
I understand.
Yeah, I think the question is, if we've sent out a formal RFP, and which we have done, and we have requested that people respond to particular elements within the RFP so that we can compare them, as we do for any other RFP that we've responded, or that we've sent out. We have no basis of comparison. We've only got 1 actual response that has anything to do with the RFP's requests.
Okay, I agree. There is just one. It's an easy call.
Well, is it? Because can we choose somebody when we've only got 1 response, or do we have to send it out again and look for a larger population
For
of responses?
$1,000?
I don't know.
I don't think we,
According to the
I
bid
think
laws, you
that,
don't
I
have.
think
Okay.
that we could do it by telephone. But I think that we are in a position to accept
We can
this
accept the 1 bid. Okay.
arborist.
All right.
And the Maltby and Company material, which you've got a copy of, we're going to make, it's going to be part of the record
But
when we get to it. We will hire,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
the follow-up letter by Mr. Maltby, I think is very relevant because we have the information without having to go out for an RFP. We have a second opinion on this opinion letter that I submitted with the application.
You do, we do, because Mr. Maltby basically said, and I mean, I'm going to read what he said, because I do think that
Well,
we're...
Before you
You can-
read what he said, he did not respond to the RFP,
Right.
which means he is responding as a citizen.
Right.
So I
you
am
can come to
perfectly,
citizen speak if you
exactly.
want.
I'm perfectly happy to accept his letter to the board, as I would accept any other citizen's letter to the board, giving us further information. But because it is not an official response to our RFP, and because he has given us no qualification information, he has given us no other information that we requested, I cannot accept it as a substitute to the RFP.
Well, it's not a substitute.
Exactly. So, you know,
But I
if
think,
you
I
want to...
think the problem that we have is a secret letter not disclosing to people what it says is a mistake.
I'm happy,
Even though
yes,
we
I agree.
need, even though we
agree.
need the board to hire an arborist.
I agree that we need to read it into the record. I just want to make it very clear that it's being read into the record as a submission from a citizen,
Right.
as we would do from any other
It
citizen.
is not the
an
second,
RFP.
it is not the
Exactly.
second opinion.
Exactly.
But as a qualified person, this guy, this is information which we can consider down the road. And we'll read it into the record, and I guess what you're suggesting is that this letter is sufficient basically to end the matter.
And he is the past president of the Mass Arborists Association. I think he should have some weight in this matter. I don't see how you're going to get a more qualified person to comment on this tree. And it was solicited by this board.
The board voted to hire an arborist, an independent arborist to advise us. And he is not an independent arborist who is advising us we have to hire an arborist.
Well,
Is he not an independent?
Because he didn't respond
may be
to
an
the RFP.
independent arborist, but we sent out an RFP saying this is
Exactly.
what we want an arborist to do. And he did some of it, not all of it, but some of it. And he has got good qualifications, but the problem that we have is sending this in as an effort to short-circuit the RFP process is,
If he...
and also
Exactly.
he's not here.
If he had responded to the RFP process the way that we had set it out, I would be happy to consider his qualifications and to consider whether or not we should hire him. But as it is, he wrote a letter essentially as a private citizen without responding to the RFP. So I'm happy to hear it, but it's
Right.
not an RFP
Okay,
response.
well, it's, the crux of the letter is this. Right? I mean, this is more than the crux. This is what the letter says.
I think if you're going to read that letter, you should also read his original submission.
I just don't want people to think that somehow this is a secret, that he concluded that the oak probably couldn't be saved.
Read them both, and then
Read
that
them
way they
both.
hear everything that he said. And there's no questions or concerns.
All right.
Can I just add the background to what happened to get to the second letter?
Yeah.
After he wrote his first letter, he came in and wanted to look at the file for the project to see what the building was going to look like. After looking at the building that was proposed, then he came back with the second letter.
Well, then I would say his second letter is totally immaterial, because what the building looks like has nothing to do with the valuation of the tree.
Right.
All right. I think that he said after he looked at the plan, basically, the building, the tree can't be saved, but that's because he looked at the presumably because he looked at the plan and saw that what they were proposing to do. And he said, if they do this, there's no way the tree can be
Well, we
saved.
already knew
Is that
that.
right?
We already knew that.
Okay, so we knew that.
Right.
Okay, so we need this arborist, and we need you to pay for him, $1,000.
I'd like you to read this into the record.
I don't think it's necessary, but what do you think, Board? Shall we read it in?
If you read his second letter, I think you should read his first.
I think you should read both letters into the
Okay,
record. And we can take turns reading if it's a lot
Why
of
don't
reading.
that's right. Let's take turns.
All right, I'll do the first letter, you can do the second
All
letter.
right.
All right. So the first letter is addressed to Phil Clark. Thank you for your confidence in remembering our firm. I could just as easily have changed our name to New England Heritage Tree Restoration Inc., but Maltby & Co. Inc. still has its ring to it. We've been in the neighborhood for a very long time and have on our payroll some of the best in the business. It looks as though you are at a crossroads with this tree. Removal is routine, but if the decision is to say that our proposal would include structural pruning, crown clean, this entire tree, as well as trimming back as needed on the long ends to reduce weight from some of the heavy leaders and improve overall shape. This would also cut down on the demand for water and nutrients on the diminished root system, which I mentioned further in the enclosed pages. This tree appears to be in fairly good condition, and good is underlined, considering its situation. In regards to internodal growth, this tree has been extremely stressed over the last 25 years of dry conditions we have had in our area. Any apparent node spacing is going to be understandably minimal. I'd be more than happy to meet with the developer's arborist and see if there can be a meeting of the minds to allow this centerpiece to remain unscathed. I certainly offer my services, or someone like me should be called in to oversee the project as the town's certified arborist on call. Maltby & Co. Inc. can supply the men and equipment to take on the entire project. It'll take a good knowledge of proper arboriculture, drainage, and hardscape installation. At this time, it is difficult to put a price tag on saving this icon of the neighborhood until we know what the developer's intentions for the site are going to be. Just trimming, fertilization, aeration of the soil is not a big deal monetarily, but I'd like to see more done in the way of reconstruction to allow this tree to thrive for ages to come and with the proper care, complement to the square as it has for 200 plus years. Please contact me with any questions that may come up at, and he gives his number. Then he gives a series of photographs with notes underneath. Do you want me to read those
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Or maybe Pete can read the notes.
Pete, do you wish to read the notes?
I'd be happy to read notes.
On you go.
And describe the picture. Well,
Show just show it to the
it's a
camera.
picture
There's a
of the
picture from the corner.
To the camera.
The reproduction isn't that good, but a picture of the tree in the winter, so there's no leaves on it. It says, as a much younger man working for my father's company, I would admire this tree while eating my lunch parked across the street. Over the years, I've watched it decline due to drought stress, insect infestation, salt spray, and lack of proper pruning. All this may be reversed by professional structural pruning and adding a regimented program of timely fertilization and insect control. Then the next one is even a less quality reproduction of more of a close-up, showing the retaining wall and the stairs kind of in the root zone area. It says, this has been the setting for many years, although it wasn't that long ago that this magnificent tree enjoyed a much larger root system, which I'm sure spread right out across the parking lot. With the installation of the retaining wall and brick steps, a great portion of that root system is now gone. This has caused the immense growth of this tree this tree saw during its first years of life slowed down to a crawl. In order to preserve this tree, this area, if possible, must be restored to allow the roots to spread out once again. Remove the wall, the brick, and the asphalt, and reconstruct a circular retaining wall to form an island encompassing the entire reconfigured drip area once the tree is structurally pruned. All this, I realize, is subject to limitations brought on by the new proposed building footprint. But it's my opinion that if something along these lines is not possible, I'm sorry to say, I don't see this tree surviving a very long time after more construction is completed. Then there's another picture showing from the steps of the building toward the tree root zone again. It says, "From this angle, you can see the value this tree provides to the area, and for this reason alone cannot be disturbed. My recommendation is to remove the brick, the granite steps. From there, the compacted surface area throughout the area has to be loosened up. This could be done by air spading and having a special mixture of fertile loam and leaf mold folded in to cover the exposed roots and allow much needed water to filter in." And then one final picture, again from the Elliott Street corner, showing the building and the retaining wall and the tree. It says, "It's obvious by that picture we're asking this tree to do the impossible. If the wall was removed, reconstructed further out from the trunk, and the roots properly pruned to encourage new growth, we could then fill the void with a bed of stone, loam, and topped off with an even covering of leaf mold, compost, to shield it from the radiant heat and hold moisture. The roots would quickly expand into this area, and the tree would greatly benefit from it."
Okay, thanks. The next is a letter dated January 7, 2011, to Mr. Clark from Robert S. Maltby of Maltby and Company. Addendum to Elliott Square Oak. Dear Mr. Clark, I revisited the Hendry's Oak today with every intention to form a realistic strategy in case the town decided to go and try and preserve it. In a perfect world, and it were crucial that it be saved, and all that I have recommended I followed through on, I can't with a clear conscience begin to guarantee it'll work. The structural pruning required to cut down on wind sail, together with the loss of all unsound wood, is going to radically affect the final appearance. Sort of like a huge trunk supporting a hat rack. This work would have to be done even if no construction was going to happen at all. Besides, in its current condition, the root area wouldn't stand any more disturbance. I repeat, if all reconstruction measures, including a very costly expansion in area to the root zone, is done, this doesn't mean it's certain the tree will have a positive response. It would be a shame to go through all the trouble just to watch it die anyway, or tip over due to the lack of support. As positive as I felt after my December visit, I have to be realistic and suggest it be removed and make room for a new generation. If you'd like, I can pass this on to the Fleming Company. Respectfully, Robert S. Maltby.
Who's the Fleming Company?
Landscape.
Bill Fleming.
Okay, and Mr. Clark has given some context that he wrote this after looking at the plan and exactly what he was thinking he done about the plan, whether the tree could be saved under the plan, or if he understood that there could be whatever. We have only one response to the RFP, and it's $4,000 from
$1,000.
$1,000, did I say 1,000?
I believe you said 4,000, actually.
I think I said 8,000.
I think maybe you did. Maybe I
Sure,
misheard.
yeah, I'm sure.
From Largesse Forestry, Inc. And I suggest that we accept this proposal and get on with this matter, because it is dragged on.
Time is a waste.
Time is wasted.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We now have two opinion letters that this tree should be removed. One is, like I said, a former past president of the Mass Arborists Association, George Atkinson. The first letter was recognized by this board as a reputable arborist. I think my due diligence as an applicant has been met with these two letters. If you want
We would want to see Mr. Maltby here to question him about how he was influenced by the plan.
No,
he's
your
non-responsive.
due diligence for the arborist is fine, I don't question that. But our due diligence to request a peer review is not. We have not had a peer review, and that's what we've requested. And we have had only one response to the RFP for a peer review.
So-
I completely respect Mr. Maltby's qualifications, if he's a past president of the Mass Arborist.
Mhm.
I have no quibble with that, but he did not respond to the
So,
RFP.
for the purposes of this meeting, I will take his response, I'll submit that as a second arborist opinion for the applicant.
That's not your decision.
You
It's
can-
our decision to
You-
request
you
a
can-
peer
You can
review.
submit it, and we're still going to
Well, I
require an
don't think you
arborist.
can because you haven't hired him.
You have the information, you have the information in front of you, and you want to keep pushing. You want to go to Rhode Island to get an arborist to say you can save the tree.
No,
I mean, come
what
on,
we want
you
to
know?
do is a peer review. If this guy
Yeah.
comes back and says that the tree can't be saved, then I'll accept his
So what
position.
happens-
But I want a peer review,
So
and I
what
think
hap-
so do the
so
other members.
This
who-
person from Rhode Island comes back and he says, hey, this tree can be saved. Where do we go?
The
What
board
do we
will
do?
consider it at that time.
Then we will, that's right, then we will have information, and we will consider it. And we will probably, if we can get your arborist and Mr. Maltby and this other arborist in here,
Remember, Mr. Maltby's a private citizen. He
I
may not want to
understand.
go
Mr.
beyond
he may
that.
not
Yeah.
want to, he may not want to do it, but that's, if he does want to
If
do
he wants to,
it.
then that's fine.
I mean, it's part of the public hearing process. In
Absolutely.
any event, let's just get on
Mr.
with it.
Chairman, just, I'm sure you all know that from time to time I do inspectional work for the Conleys, and with that in mind, I just want to make this statement. How did Mr. Maltby sign this letter?
Robert S. Maltby.
And he cites his company name?
And
his
underneath that,
designation, his
underneath that, he said, and he signed it, Robert S. Maltby, but the typewritten is Robert S. Maltby, MCAISA, under which is Maltby and Company, Inc., and then his telephone number.
So,
And the first one has the same information, but adds that he's a past president of the Mass Arborist
That's right.
Association.
Um,
Yeah.
so if he was going to submit this letter as a private citizen, why would he have put his professional designation and put his license on the line?
Well, it's on corporate letterhead, too.
This is part of his proposal to us to serve as our consultant arborist on this. But unfortunately, his proposal was non-responsive because it didn't address the scope of work that we
And it didn't
outlaid,
contain
and it
an
wasn't in the form.
amount.
I do agree with that, but how many people did we select to send this request for proposal out to?
7?
7. How many responded?
One.
One, and
Yeah.
one non-responsive.
Why didn't the other people respond?
I was actually going to ask that. That's a very good question.
And I think that Mr. Clark should call and find out.
I think that we should get on with this.
I think we've got a responsive proposal and we should move on it.
Although Bernie said something which reminded me, thank you, Bernie mentioned that he had worked for the Connollys before and disclosed that. I found out fairly recently that the architect, Daniel Architect, had worked with my firm prior to my joining the firm, but had worked with it. So I've also disclosed that. So thank you. I meant to tell you guys tonight.
It's a
Thank you
small
very much.
town.
It's a small town,
Small.
exactly. So, but thank you for reminding me. So I'd like to get on with this. I would like to get this special permit going. So I think we voted to have a peer review. I know it wasn't a unanimous vote, but we did vote to have a peer review. We've had one response. Let's have our peer review and then get going on the rest of the project. That's my motion. You're
So do
somewhat
you want to
unofficial.
make a motion?
I move that we accept, where do you go, Largesse Forestry, Inc. as our peer review consultant and hire him for $1,000 to be paid for by the developer.
And I think that we need the developer's concurrence that he will in fact pay for the,
We
Well, he's
probably need
already
a
done that.
second first, and then we need to
Yeah.
get the concurrence. Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay.
I think the motion should be amended to require the developer's concurrence.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Except, of course, he's already concurred. He agreed.
Confirmed
that
his
we would do
concurrence.
this.
Confirmed his
Okay,
concurrence.
that's fine.
That's been moved and seconded.
Yes.
I'd like to hear from Bill on this. See what he has to add to it or subtract to it. Bill, anything?
Thanks.
Sorry. I-
When Mr. Mulkey came in, he came in and discussed he wanted to discuss the project, and it's like, it is what it is, there's the plan, there's what's been proposed. And he made his second letter after looking at the plan. He didn't take and, we didn't have a discussion as to making changes. He looked at the plan, he looked at what was proposed, and that's why the second letter came. I think if he had his druthers to look at the tree and save the tree, he would find a way to save the tree. If you want to put that building up, you're not going to be able to save that tree, says his second letter. That's as plain as it is. Anything further would have to be discussed with Mr. Maltby, but he chose to follow the other avenue.
Have you met this man before, Bill? Do you know him at all?
Yes, if he walked in, I'd know, yes.
You're very respectful of his opinion?
I just met him when he walked in the door.
Okay.
I mean, he says, before he looked at the plan, he says the tree, these appears to be in fairly good condition considering its consideration. He said that he'd like to meet with the developer's arborist to see if there can be a meeting to allow this centerpiece to remain unscathed. He says, at this time, it's difficult to put a price tag on saving this icon of the neighborhood. That his work as proposed would allow this tree to thrive for ages to come with the proper care and complement the square as it has done for 200+ years. So his opinion, before he looked at the plan, was that this was a terrific tree and that it could be saved.
Right, he's local, he's been here before, he knows where the tree
He
was.
sat under the tree.
Exactly.
He
He's had
sat
his
under
lunch
the tree and he says it's a good tree, it's an icon in the neighborhood.
He said he met with some of the other business people in the neighborhood, and, that's how he developed his first opinion.
But
I didn't, you asked me a question, I answered you everything that I know about.
I know, but, here we are starting to
Yes,
quote,
correct.
we're starting to quote him to support taking the tree down, we're starting to quote him to support keeping the tree up. The point is, he is not the independent peer review.
He's not responsive to the
He did not respond to the
Okay.
proposal, he's not somebody who was hired by us, he's not somebody
Bill
who was
was
hired by
just
the
asked.
developer.
Wasn't the
I
question
know,
that was asked.
I'm just, well, I'm
Answer the
not just,
question that was asked.
I'm not just necessarily clarifying it for you, but for all of us, is that he is merely somebody who has given his admittedly expert opinion, but not somebody who has been hired by us to do a proper peer review of the first study. And that's what we've asked for.
Is he expecting $1,000 for this? No?
No.
Mr. Chairman, could we skip the RFP and have Mr. Clark call this gentleman from Rhode Island? We could hire him to come in for a meeting, and I'll either get Mr. Maltby or I'll get Mr. Atkinson to come in. You could have an arborist discussion. and
We
put
can,
this to
we can
rest.
have that. Let's just
I just, why,
do it. Let's
why don't we
No,
do it in the
it
next
has
month?
to
we
be a peer
can't do
review.
that.
We've got to hire him. We've got to go through this RFP. And then we will have the battle of the arborists, if there is a battle.
It'd be interesting.
But I'd like to knock that price down, because I have 2 letters saying to take this tree out. And now you're putting it on me through that section 11 again to pay for it.
Yeah, but
I
you have one
two-
letter saying keep the tree
There's
from the
2
same
letters.
guy.
There's 2, excuse me?
Maltby's first letter said to keep the tree.
The
His
revised
second
letter-
letter
the
said.
revised-
The
letter is the letter
revised
against
letter
Bill.
said change your plan, basically.
But the
It did
point,
not say a change my plan.
Well, but that's what Mr. Clark says the
Based
context was.
my point is
He
he's
said
given
irrespective of
conflicting.
construction, he doubted that tree could be saved. That's what it says in that second letter.
The construction of that building on your plan is what he was saying.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think it's clear that the developer has agreed to pay for a peer review consultant. We prepared a draft of a the request for proposal for peer review consultant, which the developer accepted the draft, accepted the list of arborists who it would go out to. We have gotten a responsive proposal to our request. I think it is our responsibility. I don't think there's any wiggle room in here at all. It is our responsibility to hire a peer review consultant, as was agreed, and we should just move forward with it. And the proposal's been, there has been a motion put on the table and it's been seconded. I think it's time to vote and move forward with this.
All right, but the motion does require concurrence, which would be given by the developer to Mr. Clark before Mr. Clark called up the guy and said, you're on the payroll.
He's already concurred.
I understand that, but
Okay.
I don't want the planning board to have to come up with $1,000.
Oh, but yeah, we don't have the $1,000.
No, we don't.
Right, so I want that concurrence.
Gotcha.
Any further discussion of this motion? All in favor? Aye. Favor? Opposed? 4-1. Mr. Lynch opposed. So, Mr. Clark, you are authorized to get this guy to work as soon as the developer gives you his concurrence that he will pay. And if he doesn't,
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
okay. Fine. And we're going to want to have this ready for next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to clarify, if I do not concur to paying,
Then it's the end of your application for a special permit.
I disagree. I think that means I go to a 1.5 building instead of a 10% bonus.
Oh, no, that's an interesting question.
What?
That's a very interesting question. He's relying on the tree, saving the tree.
For 10%.
It would give the 10% bonus. That's a significant natural feature. It's why we're having this discussion in the first place. He could come back with he could refuse to pay for the arborist and come back with a proposal that doesn't require a bonus.
He could do that, and then,
We would give it our every consideration.
and then we would give it our consideration.
Right.
It is a special permit process, and
Right.
it would not be in my view, it wouldn't be good not to spend this $1,000 on, just because you don't think that another arborist is necessary. We do think another arborist is
Understand,
necessary.
Mr. Chairman, I don't like to make decisions when I'm a little bit.
I get you. So talk to Mr. Clark
I will
tomorrow.
talk to him tomorrow morning.
Okay. We do, one other thing, we have a communication from the fire chief.
Oh, yeah.
And my feeling is that we should be prepared to discuss this next time. Yes,
Yeah.
Former fire chief.
former fire chief.
Yes.
We should be prepared. Bill, would you check with the fire chief and see what his view of this is?
The
I
current
already
fire
did,
chief?
he's researching it now.
Okay, fine. So we'll put this on for next meeting, but
I will say it would be somewhat useful. I mean, we are trying to determine the state of the tree based on a vote at town meeting. I mean, that's the discussion, was the saving the significant natural feature, which is in the zoning, and there were people at town meeting who spoke out in favor of saving this tree, and it's one of the reasons we are examining this so closely. It'd be awfully handy to know, and I don't know if anybody's following this or not, but it'd be awfully handy to know what people's current thoughts are about the tree. Not the board's thoughts, the public's thoughts. I mean, we're doing this in response to
well, they
what we
should
know
check
to be a
our
public
agenda
issue.
to see if the arborist is coming in next meeting. When is the next, is it next 27th we're doing this?
27th.
At what time?
Oh, yeah, what time are we continuing this to? We have 7:30 available now.
Well, what happened?
Well, we have 6:45's taken, 7's taken, and 7:15 is taken, so that leaves 7:30.
Okay, 7:30 it is.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, is this not a public hearing? For the public to be heard?
No, we announced last time that this was going to be a determination, we were going to select an arborist. That's what we determined we were going to do at this meeting. And we have actually selected an arborist.
But this is a continuation of a public hearing.
It is, but the matter at hand is the arborist.
Since there was only one option. There wasn't much discussion.
No, the arborist has, we've selected the arborist, but that was all we limited. In fact, they requested to do more than discuss the arborist tonight. And I told them that they couldn't do that because we had limited this hearing to the arborist.
That's not what the agenda says, though.
The agenda says that we're also discussing building grade.
We've discussed the building grade. I thought we solved that one. Didn't we solve
I
that one?
think we did
At the
solve
last
that
meeting?
one.
They provided information to us at the last meeting.
I thought we agreed that it was acceptable. Didn't we agree it was acceptable? I'm pretty sure we did that.
All right, but
Bill, can I ask you a question? You were going to ask the town engineer to review that analysis. Have they
Gave
done
it to
that?
them and I haven't gotten anything.
all right, fine.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
I think there's something that,
Why don't you come and tell us what it is?
thank you.
I have the last question, Mr. Chairman. What you
Okay.
referred to, that you're going to be speaking about next week, I'd like to do that in the executive session rather than the public. It's not
To do what?
to discuss the former fire
The
chief's
fire chief, we can, we'll look at this and make a determination of whether or not it's a matter that would be
Qualified.
suitable for an executive session.
Because I understand as a resident, he has a right to his opinion, but there are some facts that I dispute.
Okay, we will.
Thank you, Mr.
We will make a determination of whether or not it would be suitable for an executive session, and if it were suitable, then the board would determine whether or not they wanted to hear it in the
Okay.
executive session.
Fair enough.
Are you leaving?
I'm going to sit there.
Oh, okay.
I've had.
Margaret Donovan, 41 Central Avenue, and as I explained earlier, in about on both 36 Central and 131 Elliott. I passed around a picture of the tree in the backyard that was there up until about, this had already been renovated, but the tree was there up until about 6 years ago. And that's about the size. It was rotten to the core. So I had to replace it with another tree. The whole area between Mr. McLaughlin's house, my house, Jim McCabe's house, and over to the Elliott Street, over to the Henrys, is a ledge of slate, granite, rock. The whole area is rock. And so that's not immediately evident to anyone. This backyard had tar on it, so it wasn't until after I put in thousands of dollars of landscaping that it began to pull up from because it had no way to go down, the roots. And that is what's happening over on Elliott Street, because that oak tree has nowhere to go either, because the whole area is ledge. So I think it's important, and an arborist wouldn't see that. Nobody would see that in its current condition. But when you go to do some construction work there, where are the roots going to go? Because they're not going to be able to go down. They're going to have to go out, as the roots in my house, my yard, have to go too. And I think that's important knowledge for an arborist to be aware of before they.
Can I ask Margaret just a follow-up question? And it had to do with what Emily's suggestion is to try to get a feel on the sentiment of people, especially in the area, concerning this tree.
I told you at the last meeting that I remember sitting on the stone wall with an ice cream outside.
And I was sitting next to you.
You were sitting next to me, true.
Along with Mr. Maltby.
Yeah. It is an attractive tree, and it certainly brings back memories of my childhood there. I do not think that it's appropriate for somebody, from an arborist, who comes in there with strong childhood memories of doing the same thing, to be sitting there making a decision, how am I going to save that tree? I think it's important that your arborist be an independent person who knows nothing, who never sat under that tree, never ate an ice cream there, in order to make sure that it is an independent opinion. So I'm just saying that short life for that tree, and it's because the roots have nowhere to go.
Okay. Bill, you can mention this view to the arborist if we go.
Okay.
Yeah, the ledge actually is important information.
Okay. This is, that concludes 131 Elliott Street for tonight. And we're continuing the hearing until
7:30.
7:30 on the 27th.
27?
27.
Okay.
And now we have the town planner's report.
I've set you up for a hearing, scenic road hearing for 1369 Blue Hill Ave, which is going to wind up changing. It has already changed its address, but it doesn't have its driveway yet, to 1749 Canton Ave. So at 6:45 on the 27th, the public hearing will be at the Council on Aging.
Do we have any plans on that?
Not yet. You will. The definitive subdivision plan for, or the packet for 683, 685 Fresh Hill Road was delivered today. I gave it to you. I've also given a copy to the Board of Health, Town Engineer, and the Conservation Commission. The wind turbine project, I've been
Now,
working
when are
on-
we going to, when are we thinking of that? Sometime in February, right?
sometime in February, because they need a public hearing. They couldn't do it before the 10th of February.
Why don't we do it the second meeting in February?
The 24th.
Yeah.
Where is that relation to school vacation week? Just so-
Leave that be. That is.
Is that going to be a problem for us?
It might be abolished in school vacation due to the storm.
Really?
Yeah, it's in the news today. The February vacation might be abolished because they've been out this week.
Ouch.
Yeah,
That's harsh.
well,
Yeah, the sidewalks, really, most of them aren't even plowed. How can kids,
so they won't go to school tomorrow either.
within a mile, how do they go to school?
I just
Well,
want
they're
to,
supposed to play,
They wear
shovel their
boots.
sidewalks, aren't they?
Well, actually,
They
you
take
use
sleds.
the snow blower on ours.
the property owner is the town.
The homeowners are required to
No,
clear their
actually, no,
walks.
they didn't do that.
The
By
town
law.
owns the sidewalks.
I know they own them, but the property owner is required to shovel them.
Why shouldn't the town shovel them?
Yeah.
They do have
Look at state law.
Forever. the
Look at
kids won't get to
state
go to
law.
school.
The property owners are required to keep the
The
sidewalks.
property
Actually,
owner
there
of the
is a-
sidewalk is the town.
Since this is the selectman issue, I'm gonna, push
That's
that.
right.
You leave it over to them.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
get
I don't
it
have
to the
anything to
Get
selectmen.
back to my report and we can all go home.
No, I don't.
Definitive subdivision packet has been given to you. You want to take and have the meeting on the 24th.
Yeah.
Or you can plan for the 10th, and if it comes...
Let's do it on the 24th.
Okay. You've made a decision, it's the 24th.
685, that's our friends at 685.
Wind turbine project. I'm working on the notice of intent before the Conservation Commission, and I've been meeting with town council on the suit that Quarry Hills brought against the town last Thursday.
Okay.
Good? That's it?
Mr. Duffy,
Question, before,
he beat you to it.
well, I
I thought it was a
thought
question
he
of
might
me.
have a,
I
thought you
defer to
had, no, I thought you had
I'm
a
getting out of
motion
the
that I
way,
didn't want
go.
to hear.
Oh, go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
You didn't want to hear?
Well,
He has a question before he
I
makes
would
that
think
motion.
that
Before he
everyone would want to
make-
hear that.
right, but before we get to that, this subdivision hearing on 685 Brush Hill Road, I mean, we had specifically requested that they hold discussions and work with the neighbors, and there is a moratorium imposed by the Historic Commission on that. I would suggest that we don't have a subdivision hearing unless they've got something new to report that they've worked out with the neighbors and all that kind of stuff, until
There
that
is a
moratorium's up.
timeline on these things, though. In other words, if we don't decide this application for a definitive plan within, I think, 90 days,
Then we get,
Well,
then
no,
we
after
get
the,
constructively approved.
after the close of the public hearing.
Right, so we have to open the public hearing. I mean, we can
always require.
continue the public hearing. I mean, but starting it on the 24th seems,
This will start the public hearing process.
seems not unreasonable. I mean, we don't want to be unreasonable.
No,
We would never be.
definitely not. I'm going to let Eddie make the motion, Bill.
Yeah.
I met with Bill this week after reading in the newspaper, I don't know which paper, about down at the wharf on the river, Milton Academy and Milton High School, talking about rowing and so forth. That just heightened my concern for a plan that should have been done long ago of the whole area and the parking, the ownership of the parcels, and certain restrictions. That will come into play if this proposal gets any steam up. I think it will, and I think it's fabulous. So, Bill is very busy. I've said it over and over and over. He's wearing too many hats and not anything really fit. But anyways, I asked Bill just to keep planning board appraised of the different entities that the union are working in and trying to fit everything into that beautiful space down below. And Bill acknowledged he would never do so, but I'd like to see the board united in asking Bill to work hard on this, to report back to us when he has stuff, or for the whole board, plan would take a leadership role. And that would have to be done somehow. I think the selectmen should discuss this with Bill or our chairman and so forth. But it's an awesome proposal that they have down there, a great vision. So I say, let's have the planning board support this, and through Bill or through the selectmen, work together to make this a reality if that's what the town wants. Thank you.
I think that one of those boathouses, like the one Graham Gunn designed for Northeastern,
Or the DeWolf boathouse.
Oh, no, the one in Newton.
that was Gunn,
Aaron
that's
Street.
Gunn.
No, I think it was,
Not CRI's boathouse.
no, the one, yeah, I think it is CRI.
CRI, yeah.
Yeah, with the panels that bend out, one of those is
All right, so
awesome. I agree.
we're
in favor.
looking for, what we need to do, though, it seems to me, is dredge the Neponset River so that we have a mile of straight rowing.
Now you're really wanting to get into the controversial issues.
It just, you need, if you raise, it seems to me they're going to have to raise on...
They've dredged that river 3 times.
On Dorchester Bay.
3 times. What's the school at, it's Milton Academy, isn't it? Or is it?
Milton High School and Milton Academy.
Altogether?
That'd be
But
fantastic.
Tabor actually rose on there in Harbor, so it seems to me that Dorchester Bay...
They're talking about one, I don't think there's a proposal yet.
No,
It's
just
just
talk.
they say they'd
I
like to do
think it's a
this.
great idea.
It's a great idea.
And we are going to be discussing the plan very shortly, what we need to get a handle on the parking. And you're looking for your
I will look for that.
your
I'm
thing.
sure I remember something. And if not, I'll come in and report that I don't have it.
Well, certainly,
I remember something.
the information that Ed just brought up about the possibility of additional conflicts for parking down in that area, I guess makes it more important that we understand,
Absolutely.
you know.
I have a question, speaking of things in the paper. I think it was in 02186, My Town Matters. Pete and I were talking about this earlier. There was an article stating that a property was on sale for less than it had originally been planned to be on sale for because the town had refused it a subdivision. And I looked at the address and I didn't recognize, see, now you're looking at me puzzled as well.
Ford Ranch Road.
Yes, that's it.
Oh, that was my
Lisa Chen.
litigation.
Oh, you're
Oh,
behind
it was
that.
the planning board after all. How long ago was this?
No, it wasn't planning.
He kept it secret.
No, had nothing to do with the planning board. I'm
It
in
was
the
a
bar.
ZBA, okay. I thought it was.
Concerned about him. President of the Hillside Neighborhood Association.
I was an impacted abutter.
Well, on that note, I move that we adjourn.
Well, I'm sorry to hear.
It's just getting to be fine.
What, no seconds?
Second.
I was gonna say.
All in favor?
Aye.